Welcome to this edition of On the Scene. I'm your host, Tim Kelly. Today's program, we're going to be talking mosquitoes and what the Mosquito Control Division here in the city of Suffolk does to help keep that population literally under control. Stay tuned. Welcome back to On the Scene. We're joined now by the City of Suffolk Mosquito Control Superintendent Charles Abadam. You've seen him on our program many times talking about this exact topic, mosquitoes in the City of Suffolk. But we're going to have him on again because, again, the 2018 season is kind of off and running. But let's find out exactly what's going on and, again, the services that Charles's division provides to our citizens and business owners. So, Charles, thanks for your time today.
You're welcome.
Well, here we are. We're taping this program in late May. We'll start airing in early June, so just to give a time frame. But where are we right now with what you're seeing with your personnel out there in the community as far as what's going on in the mosquito community?
It's wet right now. I mean, it seems like we're getting April weather in May.
Right.
So it could prolong the season, or it could and it could have the season start earlier.
Yes.
It just depends on the weather.
Okay.
Right now, we're not really seeing large populations, but in the normal areas, it's in average, we're seeing mosquitoes pop up everywhere. So
right.
they're out there, but the rain is kind of knocking them down a little bit.
Yep.
They're kind of hunkering down a bit and then waiting for the weather, the humidity, and the heat to ramp up so that they can start breeding. So we are seeing mosquito eggs out there. We're seeing mosquito larvae, the normal things, but it is a slow ramp up at this time. Yeah.
Now, when we talk about Suffolk, I mean, the geography of the city, of course, with the Great Dismal Swamp, and that's one whole territory there. But really, citywide, everybody kind of deals with mosquitoes in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
Traditionally. But talk about the geography of the city and how it lends itself to how the population kind of develops and maybe perhaps not necessarily moves around, but sort of makes its presence known throughout our city.
Sure. Well, I mean, as you know, Suffolk is a swamp itself. I mean, the whole thing was the Great Dismal Swamp.
Right.
So now the federal area of the of the Great Dismal Swamp National Wildlife Refuge is just kind of in our southwestern corner. So there are intermittent swamps, water, marshes throughout Suffolk. So you are going to have some marshland, swampy mosquitoes in all of the areas, but then located in our downtown areas, the more urban area, and in the north where it's more developed in the you have neighborhoods, there's going to be those urban mosquitoes. So really, when we talk about urban mosquitoes, we're kind of talking about Aedes albopictus and the tiger mosquitoes, the ones that can breed in tires, artificial containers, things that's around your home, and those are the things that you need to tip and toss.
Correct.
Those mosquitoes that are breeding in the ditches that we can also go and check. That's when you can use some of the mosquito dunks that we provide free from several of the firehouses, as well as City Hall, mosquito control, the libraries.
Right.
So that's kind of how the environment happens. Swamps everywhere, urban areas, you're going to get more tigers, and you know, it really just depends on the time of the year. So you have the spring, summer, and fall, and that actually really dictates when a particular mosquito species will be present.
Now, of course, the title of your division is Mosquito Control, but some people may think, well, y'all are just sitting around waiting for the call to say I got mosquitoes. That's not the case.
No.
I mean, y'all are very active, much like what you're trying to track down, but talk about how, or at least I should say the philosophy and the work that goes into controlling the mosquito population as far as what y'all are doing really almost on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So what we base our whole operation on is an integrated mosquito management process. It's basically an integrated pest management process, but more focused on mosquitoes. So we do a lot of focus on our surveillance, and our surveillance drives everything. Data from our surveillance means trapping, going out and trapping for adult mosquitoes, having our technicians also then go out and dip for mosquitoes, bring back samples. Our biologists identify the mosquitoes both in the adult and in the larval form. And from that data, we can figure out where we need to dish out, more services, focus our efforts in a particular area.
Sure.
And surveillance is going on throughout the year, adult-wise, throughout Suffolk, in particular areas that we have our particular traps.
Yes.
And then surveillance is also going on, larval surveillance through our technicians is going on throughout the year. So when they find larvae, they treat. So that's kind of how the integrated mosquito management approach happens. We also are using, when we find a lot of adults in a particular area, I send out spray technicians at night and in the evening to spray.
Mm-hmm.
And then our mosquito biologists are actually testing our adult mosquitoes for diseases like West Nile virus and triple E, which is our two most prevalent diseases in Suffolk. There are no other diseases in Suffolk right now that have been identified.
Correct.
And also, we have never really had a reported human case in Suffolk. So that's lends to the services that we do, so we're trying to knock down a population so that we can actually cut the disease transmission cycle. Mm-hmm. It's really not about killing the mosquito that has the disease. It's about cutting the transmission off from the mosquito that can transmit it from, that can get it from a bird and to a human.
Got it.
So really, we are, killing the mosquitoes with the diseases so that we can cut that transmission.
What are some of the tools of the trade, so to speak, that you and your staff use when you're going out and about? We might see a truck doing some spraying, but there's other things that are being utilized to do this. You talked about some of it there, but just go into that a little bit about what, if people see someone, I don't know if they even really might blend in, so to speak, because it isn't maybe a very overt thing, but I'm just curious from your perspective, the tools that y'all use on a day-to-day basis, depending upon the situation, of course.
So most people would probably see our technicians out during a day. They would be driving in their trucks. They probably would have a satchel on them and a dipper. So a dipper is something that they would use to sample the water, and then they would look for mosquitoes, and if there are mosquitoes present, they would then use some pesticide that they'll have in their satchel and then place it in the water. Now, frequently, some people may see our biologists out setting traps in particular areas, and they would be carrying a whole bunch of different devices, different styles of traps. So one we hang on trees, others that lay on the ground, and then they would probably have some type of bait with them, either a carbon dioxide tank, some batteries. So that's kind of what you would see our biologists holding. And then that's really most of what it is, other than the adult-side truck, the truck that's going to be spraying in the evening.
How much, in a typical year, and I don't know if there is a typical year in your neck of the woods, so to speak, for what you deal with, that how much road miles, if you will, get put on that truck for the spraying, and I know the season will dictate some of that to a point, but there's got to be a general idea about how much driving around that's done in that vehicle to do the pesticides distribution.
It does definitely differ based on how we have the city split up. So we have the city split up into the northeast, northwest, southeast, and southwest regions, and then our downtown. So depending on the activity of the mosquitoes, like you said, it's going to dictate. So I mean, in the typical day, a technician can drive 50 miles, so 50 miles in a 6-month span per day, you can do the math. And
with the volume of lane miles that we have in the city, I mean, obviously not every area is getting sprayed every day, but again, some of it's situational, some of it's regular patterns that you're probably used to and but I mean, that truck and those folks that are doing that are probably very active, shall we say, in a typical season as far as being out and about. What are some things, and you mentioned this again earlier, I'm going to shift to this for just a second, that people can do on their own? And I know you mentioned the mosquito dunk, so let's talk about that, as well as things people can do to kind of, if you will, mosquito-proof their area, their yard, their field, whatever they can do to kind of make things better for themselves, their neighbors, and for the city as a whole.
Some of the easiest things is the tip and toss program. Anything that's holding water, tip it over or toss it out if it's not necessary. Especially recycled, especially used tires. Huge proponent of increasing mosquito population in an area. And if people have any information about any tires in an area that we can publicly access, we would love to know so that we can go pick those up. Then if there are low-lying areas in your yard or you have ditches in front of your yard, you can get your mosquito dunks from fire stations, libraries, city hall, mosquito control. Some of the rec centers may have them.
I believe so. I believe so.
And then one thing that's good that we have had people have been using is our online system. They can do a service request off of our website, and from that we will take that information, create a service request and send a technician out to go check it out. We don't have access to their property unless they give us permission through that request.
Correct.
So we will not. We don't have access to private property.
Of course.
Unless it's given to us. So if it is given to us, they'll do a full-out inspection. They'll check things out, and then in the end, they'll put either talk to the homeowner and give them a pamphlet. It's not really a pamphlet. It's a sheet of paper. It's a door hanger that will give them recommendations of what they can do in a particular place.
Sure.
If my technicians find a place that they can treat, they will treat. And then you can always give us a call, send us an email. Phone number is 757-514-7609. And you would get me, and I would set up a service request for you or set up a spray. And then the email is mosquito.control@suffolkva.us.
Okay, and we'll put that information on the screen up a couple times throughout the show. That way people will reinforce that.
Sure.
Certainly mention go to the city's website where all this information is, along with some other mosquito information that you've put out there over the years that we've kind of combined right there. And people could also go online to see where spraying is it going to be taking place or has taken place with the map?
So the map will actually show you what has been sprayed in the past week. And then what will be sprayed in the next 2 to 3 days.
Got it.
It is hard to schedule out sprays so far out in the week just because of what we could find out in the area. We could find some disease out in a particular population in a particular neighborhood.
Sure.
Or we could find just a huge population of mosquitoes that could be annoying and a nuisance, but also be a public health problem. So really a lot of those things change, but they will change also on the website too. So I keep up with that and make sure that if I schedule something that it does get done or it gets moved forward or we do some shifting. But it is a good thing to check out to see if you have been sprayed or if you are going to be sprayed.
Got it. Now you mentioned about, and you talked about this earlier as well, the testing for disease. How quick is the turnaround on that? So if you have a technician's in the field and he or she, brings back a sample, how quickly do you know? Is it within that day, within 24 hours? Is there a period of time?
Yeah.
That you know whether you got a hit or not, so to speak.
So really those tests come from our adult surveillance traps. So our mosquito biologists and our interns would set those traps. Our technicians are only doing the larvae.
Okay, got it.
But they would come back and then those mosquitoes would be identified, and we typically test those mosquitoes in that same day. And it's really a diagnostic test to see if there is any disease in those particular mosquitoes. And not all mosquitoes transmit disease. It's only very specific species that transmit West Nile virus and triple E. So usually when those get tested and we find something, then we will be reactionary and also help to service particular areas and surrounding areas. Now, those tests, like I said, are diagnostic. So we still get those confirmed via a more specific and more intensive test, and we send those out to get verified. But we do want to make sure that we are protecting our citizens. So through this diagnostic test, it says, hey, there could be a problem here, so what we need to do is we need to act on that.
Understand. Now you mentioned mosquito dunks, and for those who are not familiar, it's a little white, about yay big. We'll put up a shot of what they look like.
It's like a donut.
Right, yeah, and some people call them that, mosquito biscuits. I've heard all kind of different phrases for what they are. We don't eat them. That will not protect you from mosquitoes.
And they are placed in water,
That's right.
and they are not thrown out into a yard.
I think we did a PSA a few years ago talking about what you don't do with them. But as a resident in the city of Suffolk, you can get, what is it, one pack or
One pack a month.
One pack a month, okay.
And each dunk actually lasts 30 days.
Okay.
And each dunk also treats about 100 square feet.
Got it.
So.
And as far as where they should be placed, you kind of mentioned it already, just don't throw them in your yard. But there's strategic placing that you would need to do as the homeowner. But what generally are those locations that people should look for to utilize those?
Just low-lying areas that you know are holding water, that will hold water after rain, and then your ditches, you know. And if you have a large expanse of ditch that you think is breeding, you can place a service request and we can go check it out.
Correct, right.
Or, you know, if we know that you historically have been getting these amount of dunks, we do make exceptions based on looking at your property and knowing that there's particular mosquitoes in your area. Right.
So and to pick them again, they're free of charge. They're provided. They're a service, and really it helps everyone to be able to utilize properly. I think you just need a photo ID and just to sign your name, and I think you're good to go.
Yeah, sign it, put your name, address, and phone number, and then you're good to go.
Perfect. Okay. And again, as Charles mentioned, you several locations: the fire stations, the Suffolk Public Libraries. You also, when you come to City Hall, you can come here to the Media and Community Relations Office. So we have a lot of locations throughout the city that people can get access to them. If you have a question, again, you call Mosquito Control and they can give you direction and kind of help you with that as well.
Absolutely.
So, you know, again, at this stage, it's still early in the season, so to speak.
Yeah, it is.
What is the latest the season's ever kind of gone to? It's not like, you know, hurricane season, we say, you know, it's June 1st to the end of November, but I know the temperatures and the conditions will dictate it more than anything else.
It really just depends.
Yeah.
You know, like, so it has extended. We now go until the end of October, but we will see mosquito populations in November at times.
Right.
I mean, you know, the weather around here is not very predictable.
Correct.
So, and our winters have been getting a little bit more warmer and inconsistent as far as the cold is concerned.
Sure.
So, we will see mosquito populations pop up when you get those 70, 80, you know, degree days in the winter, in the fall and the winter. And we kind of get excited. So when we see that the temperatures actually are going to increase in a day, in particular areas, we will set some traps out.
Right.
We usually finish up all trapping and testing and whatnot in October.
Okay.
But like I said, it does extend out. Now, those mosquitoes aren't the mosquitoes that would be posing any public health threat, but you know, just trying to see how far a population or how far mosquito populations can go throughout this area is pretty interesting. I think it's just a mark of how the warmth has been coming up from the south.
Right.
You know, whether or not you do believe in climate change and global warming and whatnot, it is affecting the way that our environment is being controlled.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
The warmth is increasing the amount of mosquitoes.
Right.
Whether or not the populations are higher than they have been, we'd have to just look at data, and we do have that data available. But what I've seen in general is that the length of the season is longer. We have been starting a little bit earlier as far as surveillance is concerned. Testing, we don't, because we generally see testing beginning in June, because that's when the diseases kind of start ramping up, and then we end those a little bit earlier than October, but everything usually ceases in October, but we begin operations pretty early.
How does Suffolk Mosquito Control interact with and coordinate with other mosquito control divisions in the Hampton Roads area? How do you guys work together?
Oh, we have several different organizations that we actually talk to on a monthly basis. So the Tidewater Mosquito and Vector Control Council, that is our operations usually gets together, and there's a meeting every month in a particular place that the council actually agrees upon.
Yep.
And then, you know, Chesapeake, Suffolk, Virginia Beach, Portsmouth, Newport News, Hampton, I don't know if I said Norfolk.
Right.
in Virginia Beach, and we all kind of sit together and we tell them what's happening with our mosquito populations, what kind of operations that are happening in those particular areas. Are they doing spraying? Are they seeing this? Are they, just talking about what's been happening in each of the cities gives us an idea of what's happening around the region, so that we can go, okay, should we be preparing for this? Should we be seeing this? Then we have another organization that we meet quarterly with the biologists from all of those cities.
Got it.
And we talk about the same things, but then we go into a little bit more depth about particular species, particular diseases, seeing any trends and looking at data a little bit more closely. If there's anything that's happening with new testing or exotic diseases that are coming in. So we are well informed with that. I mean, our biologists and myself and some of the technicians are a part of Mid-Atlantic Mosquito Control Association, so we know what's going on in a particular portion of the East Coast. American Mosquito Control Association, and all of these associations have websites that you can check out and give you some more information about mosquitoes. But that's how we kind of go from the local, regional, and then more of a national scale, and it's really interesting work.
Well, and I think, like you said, if there's a trend or there's something that's going on that maybe hasn't come to Suffolk, or Suffolk is having an issue, because again, with everybody, we're kind of all in the same plane when it comes to what we're dealing with here. It's good to know that y'all are coordinating like you talked about, and it makes certainly a lot of sense to do so, to kind of approach it not just from the local perspective, but regionally, and as you said, be broader than that too.
This area is just very interesting because it's in the middle. We are kind of a stopping point for a lot of migrating birds, and birds are usually the vectors or the host for the diseases that the vectors, meaning the mosquitoes, can actually obtain your West Nile, your Triple E, your other diseases. So bird migration is very interesting in this area, so it's a big portion of disease transmission.
All right. Well, Charles, I appreciate your time today. You're always a wealth of information, and again, it's a good way for the residents of Suffolk to see exactly what's going on, kind of understand the methodology, understand what they can do to help the situation, as the case would be, the resources that you and your staff provide, which I think are most critical part of this. It's definitely tax dollars at work in a very positive way, and a big impact for things. Monitoring, so hopefully the situation doesn't get out of hand, being on top of things in the case that something would arise in a disease type situation. But we appreciate everything that you and your staff do, and to keep the mosquito population as under control as possible and continue to work in that vein. So we appreciate everything.
Thank you.
All right, Charles. Well, that would do it for this edition of On the Scene. I'm your host, Tim Kelly. We'll see you next time.